Hey everyone, welcome in. It's time for another edition of the Pick Six. I'm your host, Wobby, inside TCO Studios in Eagan. Thank you for submitting your questions. Now let's get to work and answer them. The first one comes from Tom in St. Paul. I know Dalvin isn't the most talked about offensive player on our team, but I just sense that he's actually the key for us this year. Do you agree? Well, Tom, I certainly agree that Dalvin is going to be a pivotal player for the Vikings in 2019. More importantly, the running game is going to be important for the Vikings in 2019. It was a point of emphasis this offseason, both in terms of scheme for offensive coordinator Kevin Stefanski and the acquisition of personnel. For the personnel department, the Vikings addressed running back and offensive line in the draft and offensive line in free agency. The Vikings want to be able to run the ball. Why? To establish a tempo for the offense, to establish a mantra of physicality, and also to take pressure off of Kirk Cousins and the passing game. Dalvin Cook is going to be a big key for the Vikings in 2019, and so are the rest of the running backs. The Vikings are stacked when it comes to the running back position. Next question comes from Sam in Rochester, Minnesota. Will Josh Kline be the starter at right guard when we open against the Falcons in week 1 of the regular season? Well, Josh Kline is going to be the starter at right guard when the Vikings open training camp in a couple of weeks. He's been working with the first team for most of the offseason program, OTAs, and the mini camps. Now, there's no rule that says someone can't jump up and beat Josh Kline out for that starting position, but right now, I'd make the free agent acquisition this offseason from Tennessee the heavy favorite to start at right guard. Next question comes from Cade in Burnsville. Do you think Mike Zimmer and Gary Kubiak can out-scheme some of our tougher games this year? Bears, Chiefs. Yeah, those are going to be 3 tough games for the Vikings on the schedule this season, 2 against the Bears and 1 against the Chiefs, along with a bunch of other ones. The addition of Gary Kubiak to this staff, not just from a schematic standpoint, because remember, Kevin Stefanski is the offensive coordinator. He's running the show on the offense. But I think the addition of Gary Kubiak for Mike Zimmer, it becomes important during the week in the meeting rooms, maybe just Coach Zimmer and Gary Kubiak talking one-on-one as they're doing right there on the field. Gary Kubiak has been a head coach in this league. He's won a Super Bowl in the NFL. Mike Zimmer has won a Super Bowl in the NFL. Those two guys can exchange stories and ideas. I think Gary Kubiak will be a big-time asset for Mike Zimmer this season when it comes to ideas of being a head coach and how to lead a team and an organization. Next question comes from Elliot in LA, California. Who do you think will lead us in sacks this season? Well, it could be any number of players on the Vikings defense. The Vikings are stacked on defense, but I think this question leads you down one of 2 paths. That guy right there, Danielle Hunter, he's a monster. That guy right there, Everson Griffen, is an established monster who's already led the Vikings in sacks multiple years. So I don't know who it's going to be between those two. I think because of the season Danielle had last year, a lot of attention is going to be paid to number 99. That could open up some opportunities for that guy right there, Everson Griffen. So I don't want to bet against either one of those two, but if I had to pick one, maybe it's going to be Everson who jumps up. Next question comes from Bill. Is it true that no offensive lineman or tight end has ever won Offensive Rookie of the Year? Sounds a little fishy to me. Wouldn't it be fantastic for that to change this year? Skull. Yeah, it would, Bill. It would be fantastic for that to change this year because the Vikings took an offensive lineman, that guy, Garrett Bradbury, in the first round, and they took a tight end, Irv Smith Jr., in the second round. So if that does change this year, there's a good chance a Viking would win that award. And it is true, since 1967, when the Associated Press has handed out Offensive Rookie of the Year, it's been a quarterback, a running back, or a wide receiver every single year. Maybe Bradbury or Irv Smith Jr. can change that. Our final question comes from Jim in Shakopee, Minnesota. Do you think the players of yesterday were tougher than are the players we have today? Well, no doubt about it. The players who have played in the past in the NFL, players like the guys who played along the Purple People Eaters, Jim Marshall, Carl Eller, Alan Page, Doug Sutherland. Yeah, those guys were tough. The Steel Curtain, the Fearsome Foursome. The players who played in that era of the NFL, they had the stigma of being gritty, of being tough, of playing through injuries. But remember, they also played in an era where we didn't have MRI machines and we didn't have advances in medical technology. Guys like Linval Joseph, Anthony Barr, Adam Thielen, they play in that era where injuries are more diagnosable, but that doesn't mean they're less tough. All three of those players I mentioned, plus many others on the roster, have played through injuries and played through injuries last year. So while the medical advances and technology have advanced in today's NFL, the players are not less tough. Current players are very tough and play through a lot of injuries. That's going to do it for this week's edition of the Pick Six, but we will be back next week. So please submit your questions to the email address at the bottom of the screen, and maybe we'll see you in next week's edition of the Pick Six.